I am Stephen Cole, and I'm the author, librettist, and lyricist of The Night of the Hunter, which is going to be here at Lyric Stage for the first time with a full orchestra starring Davis Gaines and Julie Johnson. Well, this was brought to me by the composer, my late composer, Clabe Richardson, who also wrote The Grass Harp, which was on Broadway with Barbara Cook. And he said, hey, watch this movie. I think this would make a great musical. And I watched this movie, and it was scary. And I went, well, I don't know. And then I read the novel by Davis Grubb, which was a bestseller in 1954. And the language was so beautiful and Capote-esque, and the story warmer and not just a thriller, that I went, yeah, let's try this. And we started writing some songs for it. We were very lucky up front because once we did a few demos, we got the Vineyard Theater in New York to do a workshop. Right after that, we had Maurice Sarabande Records decided to do a concept album, their first concept CD, with a full orchestra starring Ron Raines and Dorothy Loudon and Sally Mays and Marcia Lewis. And so we went into the studio and recorded 60 minutes of the score, not the whole score. And it came out and it got rave reviews from Billboard and won awards, and it propelled us then to the Goodman Theater, where Bob Falls directed a workshop. Unfortunately, Bob Falls then directed Aida on Broadway and told us, I'm never going to direct another musical again. I hated the experience, so we didn't do that at the Goodman. But we wound up, then Clabe was ill. He was here in Fort Worth when we did Gross Singers at Casa Mañana, but he was already ill with cancer. And when he passed away, we were in the midst of doing a workshop in New York, which then led to our first production in San Francisco under the direction of John Boab, who produced the original Mame and Sweet Charity. And that went really well. Lynn Winterstellar was in that. And then we did it in the New York Music Theater Festival under the auspices of Lyric Stage. Stephen Jones has always believed in the show. He wanted this show here way before, when Clabe was still alive, but somehow it wasn't the right timing. And if we'd done it then, we probably would have done it with a piano or two pianos. But now with this whole thing of orchestras happening, it's quite amazing that finally we're going to hear the score live with a full orchestra with 24 pieces. Well, you always dream of the full orchestra. You know, and Clabe is from the old days. He was about 20 years older than me. No, more, sorry, like 25, 30 years older than me. And so he was from the 1950s, where, of course, you produced the show and you got a full orchestra. His first show was orchestrated by Jonathan Tunick, and then Robert Russell Bennett did his last chart for that. So he was just used to that kind of sound. But in his head, he always heard that, and but he composed at the piano, and an orchestrator came along and did it. And so it's amazing for me, especially because I'm the widow of the show. I'm holding it together, and to know that here in Texas, where actually Clabe is from, we're doing it with a full orchestra, and he's going to be listening somehow. I just know. And with the orchestration that we used on the CD, which he approved of, plus it's being finished by Scott Eckert, a local musical director, orchestrator, writer here. And so it's going to be very exciting for me to hear things that have never been orchestrated, that had only been done by 5 pieces. So the sweep of this score, it's a very traditional orchestration in that there's a piano and a harp in the pit. I mean, who gets a harp anymore? And on Broadway now, you get 9 pieces if you're lucky for a little night music. And that's the most sweeping score. So this part of the character of this show is in the music, and it's a thriller. And so it's very important, I think, to be able to give people the emotion that they might not get from all of the acting, the writing, all of that. There's yet another aspect, otherwise why do a musical? Yeah, the end of Act 1 was not used in the movie. It's a storm on the Ohio River, which is very, not only a real storm, but very metaphoric for the characters, for John, who's the little boy who is up against the preacher, the real battle between good and evil. And this is, the end of the act was never used in the film. And you would think it's such a movie thing, a storm on a river and people singing and trying to keep themselves alive, but they didn't do it. So I decided, well, I'll do it. And now Cheryl Denson, our director, is cursing me for the storm. It's going to be fabulous, though. And nothing, you know, on stage, nothing has to be totally realistic. It has to be something else. And since it's a symbolic storm at the same time as a realistic storm, and the music is just playing and the thunder. So that's one of the aspects of it. And I think the story, the realism and the warmth of the story comes out more when it's in the musical than it does in the film. And it's just as scary, except now the preacher sings. Davis we're thrilled to have him. You know, 2,000 performances of The Phantom, and he's having a wonderful time because this is it's a difficult role, it's a rich role, but at the same time, he is a psychopathic killer who is absolutely charming, who absolutely takes in the whole town and takes everyone in but this little boy. So it's an interesting, and we know from the beginning that he's a killer, because that's what makes it a thriller. And there are actors who would not be so happy to not be loved, but this is a guy you don't love in the end, and that's part of the story. Julie Johnson did the workshop in New York, so I know how good she is. First of all, we're not using it, but she's a brilliant comedian. I've used her in other things where I've written songs for her, comedy songs. She's one of the greatest singers around. It's never been sung like this. But she also brings a total authenticity because of the country feel, because of her. She is also not afraid as an actress of being someone from 1932 who does become a religious fanatic, who lets him into her home, marries her, even neglects her children in certain ways. Julie will go there as an actress, and her, I wish I had humor for her in the show. It's not a humorous role, but she can do almost anything. She's a very rich actress, and then you add that voice on top of it. And when she sings white gospel, oh baby.